on our very first operation, we were coming back and the rear gunner suddenly shouted corkscrew, and there was a plane, it was a twin-engine plane coming up behind, and it let off a burst, and one bullet went through the rear turret, went through the rear gunner's clothing, cut off his heating supply, which was very aggrieved because it got very cold, but we got back safely. The attacking aircraft I saw overtook us as we dived on the corkscrew, and we never saw it again. So that was the really a sort of a foretaste of what could have come. But we were quite fortunate. We never saw any single or twin-engined aircraft again.
And how did you feel about the Churchill's decision to order the bombing of Germany?
How about it?
Churchill ordering Germany to be bombed.
Well, I think it was wartime. I must say that in all our briefings, we were all briefed to bomb military targets, not just towns, but at the time the accuracy of bombing was such that our towns were destroyed. Not accidentally, but I think the powers that be knew what was going on. But as I said, we were briefed to bomb targets.
And you just mentioned briefings. How did the briefings work?
In what way?
Well, how many people would you have in the room, and how would you be shown maps or photos?
Oh yes, there's a big map at the front, and with the target and the route marked. The pilot and the navigator had a separate briefing initially, and then we all went together to the main briefing. I suppose, depending on the number of planes that were going, 7 crew. Well, it must have been sort of getting on for 70, possibly, in the briefing. And the commander got up and gave a brief talk, and then the chief navigator and bombing instructor all gave a brief talk, and then we went for a pre-operational meal and got ready.
What did you do to prepare yourselves for the mission?
Well, just went to the equipment room and got our parachutes and got dressed and waited around for the time to go off.
And as you got aboard the plane, were you feeling nervous?
Times more than others, yes.
And was there anyone who was actually showing any fear, or were they keeping it to themselves?
I think they were all keeping it to themselves, yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you know of anyone who, during the war, who just felt too nervous to get aboard the plane?
I don't know of anyone, no.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there were people that decided that they couldn't go on, but they were got off the stations as quickly as they could.
So, if you can, please, could you describe your first ever mission over Germany?
Well, as I said, the first ever mission was the one in which we got shot at, but survived that. The worst trip was on the VI storage sites in France. This was a daylight raid, and the mid-upper gunner said there's a Lank immediately above us, just opened his bomb doors. But before we could do anything, we had two thumps, and one of the bombs went through the port wing and took away the port undercarriage. And so I shut down the engine on that side, because it was immediately behind the engine. And we came home on 3 engines and landed. Well, my pilot decided to land on the grass runway, which we did. And again, no one was hurt.
Were you worried the plane would crash when the...
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, it came down. Our pilot was very successful in landing it. Did a belly landing, because we lost all the hydraulics. We couldn't get the other undercarriage down. Couldn't use the flaps, or we just had to come in. We were quite fortunate.
And did incidents like that, after that incident, were you reluctant to go on more missions?
No. It's just a job.
So you mentioned that you were, was it VIs you were bombing?
Well, the VI, the storage sites, yes.
Sorry, could you explain what those are? I'm not familiar with them.
The VI, the doodlebugs.
Oh.
Yes, they had storage places for them. This was at Trossy, St Maxim. I don't know where that is now, but it's in France somewhere.
And what kind of payload would your Lancaster carry?
Well, initially it was 1,000-pounders and the incendiaries. And then when we went to Pathfinder, it was we dropped flares initially to light up the target area, as well as high explosives.
Do you remember what kind of military targets you were generally after?
What the canal, Dotmadam's Canal, railway sidings, bridges, harbours, all sorts of things.
And did you ever hear how successful your missions had been?
Well, they did display photographs afterwards you could see. Definitely some of them were definitely successful, but I don't remember a lot about it, no.
Okay. So, was your first raid over Germany in 1943?
No, 44.
Okay. And had you heard about the 1,000 bomber raids they were doing?
Oh, yes, yeah. Yes, I had read about them, yes.
And how many planes would generally accompany your Lancaster?
I think it depended a lot. Possibly upwards 20, 50, possibly 100. I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Were there any points aboard a mission where you could relax to a degree?
Well, we relaxed to a degree once we were on the North Sea on the way home. But we still had to keep a lookout. But we didn't really relax until we landed.
And what was the procedure for coming into land?
We had to call up the station and were given directions as to what height to circle and sort of gradually come down, and then told we could go into land.
Were landings scary at all?
No, I don't think so. I don't recall.
So the incident where you mentioned with the where you had to shut down the engines.
Yes.
Did you had control? Does that mean you had control over the engines as the engineer?
Yeah. Well, yes. I'm not sure whether I got the order to shut it down, but I did it anyway because as the bomb had sort of taken all the bits behind the engine, I thought there was a danger of petrol coming and catching fire, so that's why I shut the engine down.
But was the rest of the aircraft still working fine?
It was, yes. But as I said, we lost all the hydraulics. We couldn't operate the flaps or what was left of the undercarriage. But the pilot did a good job.
So how many people would you normally have aboard the bomber?
7 altogether.
And can you describe conditions in general aboard the bomber?
There wasn't a lot of room, I know that. Yes. Well, we had to get from the door up to the front of the aircraft, over the main spar. But once we're in position, it was quite okay.
And how was morale in general amongst the crew?
Generally pretty good, yes. Yeah.
And did your squadron suffer heavy losses?
Occasionally, yes. I can't recall any particular case, but we did lose certainly some.
Mm-hmm. And were there any? Do you remember any occasions where you were over major German cities?
Remember going to Munich and Hamburg a number of times. We never went to Berlin. Yes, I don't really remember much about that.
Was there heavy anti-aircraft fire?
Oh, plenty, yes. Yeah. We see them exploding in the air, yes.
Did they ever come near the plane?
We were quite fortunate. We didn't have a lot of damage. We did have some shrapnel damage, but not a lot. No.
You mentioned was it the tail gunner who got his heating supply cut off?
Yes.
Did he seem traumatised at all by that?
I don't think he was traumatised, but he certainly remembered it because when my wife and I went to Perth in Australia, where he lived, we managed to meet him. He was telling my wife about it. He was most aggrieved about the heating supply going off.
Was his reaction to it pretty normal?
I think so, yes.
And I'm sorry to ask this, but did you know anyone who died during the raids?
During the Blitz, yes, distant, well, some friends of my parents moved to place. They were lived in Kilburn initially, and then moved to place near Barking, and then one of the girls who was my age was out doing fire watching or something, but she was killed, and one of the other sisters was wounded. But, I don't know anyone else really close.
Did you know anyone in the RAF who died on raids over Germany?
Oh yes, quite a number from the squadron we were on, yes.
Did you ever talk about them?
Not a lot, no. I remember we had two people from Ireland. One was a young chap, probably my age, and the other one was a bit older. And the older man was on his last mission, got shot down and killed, and this young chap was really upset about that. But I don't remember much about anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Were there any occasions when your squadron dropped leaflets?
I can't recall dropping actually leaflets, no. We did drop the window, you've heard about that, yes. But I don't remember about leaflets, no.
Could you please describe what the procedure was for deploying window?
Well, there was a chute near where I was, and it was just unpacking the packets and dropping them sort of shortly before we went into Germany. But I don't think we had them all that much.
Do you think window was effective?
It probably was. Well, initially anyway. Later on, I don't know. There was a chute next to my position where I could drop them through.
So it was your duty to drop them and not the bomb aimer?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you explain what impact window had on the Germans?
Well, initially it upset their radar quite a bit, but then eventually they got used to it, and I think that was probably why we stopped.
And you mentioned you only saw that twin-engined plane that one occasion.
Yes.
Did you ever see any other German planes?
In the distance, yes. Yes, or near a target, we saw a couple well below us. Don't remember seeing any more. No.
When you saw them, were you worried that they would come near you?
What was over?
When you saw the planes below you,
yes,
were you worried they would come and attack?
Well, they were well below us. I don't know what they were doing, but they were coming crosswise, but too often together. But whether they were after a particular target or not, I don't know.
And were you sat in the cockpit the whole time?
Yes, well, mainly yes.
What would you do if you had to move around the bomber?
Well, we had portable oxygen bottles we had to take. I did have to go back to the rear gunner once because his the fluid was leaking from his supply that operated the turret. I managed to put one of these circlets round because it had come off the supply, but he had to be very careful ultimately.
Could you describe what kind of equipment what kind of clothes would you wear aboard the bomber?
A very thick jumper, some form of outer coat of some sort. I don't really remember. And then the May West. I remember it was very bulky and sort of getting through the aircraft at the time.
And did you wear an oxygen mask at all times?
Yes, pretty well all the time, yes.
And where did you keep the parachutes?
The parachutes, well, my parachute was stored just behind me. The pilot had a sit-on one, as did the rear gunner, I think. The rest of the crew had the parachutes as near as they could get them.
And what kind of instruments did you have in front of you when you were sat in the cockpit?
Well, the instruments at the side were the oil pressures and temperatures, etc. In the front, we had the normal I can't really remember. I know we had the all the knobs for pressing to cut off the engines. As I wasn't so much concerned with the flight controls as the engine temperatures and pressures. That was at the side.
Can you remember what would happen aboard the plane when you reached the targets and had to drop the bombs?
Well, the bomb aimer gave directions, and then had to fly straight and level for a certain length of time, and then he had bombs gone and immediately closed the bomb doors and got off as quickly as we could.
Did your Lancaster ever carry a cookie?
That's the £4,000, yes. I think it did on occasions, but I can't really remember now.
Could you actually feel the bombs leaving the plane?
So, do you see?
Could you feel the bombs leaving the plane?
Oh. Well, when they were dropped, yes, it did sort of go up quite suddenly.
And did you ever go on... Were your missions mainly at night?
Mainly at night, although we did do some daylight ones. This was mainly, as I said, over the storage sites in France.
Did you prefer daylight or night missions?
I think night, because I couldn't see what was going on.
Could you ever see the cities below you?
Yes, you could, especially when we were dropping the flares, yes.
And could you please explain what how the Pathfinder missions worked?
Yes, we were in, there was the Flare Force 1, which went out early when the bombing was due to start, and we dropped the flares. Then, if necessary, the master bomber called out for more flares, and then there was the Flare Force 2, which was sort of circling around and then came in and dropped the other flares. And that was really mainly what I can remember.
When did they actually invent the Pathfinders, if you like?
I think it came into force in 1942 because they were worried about the bombing wasn't very accurate at the time. And I think it did improve with the Pathfinders.
So, just trying to make sure I've got this right. So the Pathfinders would drop the flares, and the flares would then, the other main bombers would follow the flares.
That's right, yes.
And was pathfinding just as dangerous as other bombing?
I believe it was, but we didn't know much about it at the time. Yeah.
And what did you think of the bombing of Hamburg in 1943?
We didn't hear much about it at the time, no. So I can't really say.
And what about the bombing of Berlin?
Well, that again, I simply never went to Berlin, but so that again I can't really say.
Okay. And what about Dresden?
Well, Dresden, we were briefed to bomb the railway sidings where there was supposed to be a lot of German concentrations ready to go to the Eastern Front, which was what we did. Didn't really know at the time how the town was devastated.
Were you still on Pathfinders at that point? Were you still on Pathfinders for the Dresden mission?
Yeah.
So would Pathfinders actually carry bombs or just flares?
No, we did carry bombs as well, yes.
Okay. And were some cities more heavily defended than others?
Yes, those in the Ruhr were quite heavily defended, yes. Others not so much.
Was Dresden heavily defended?
That I can't remember. I don't think it was. No.
And was the Flak 88 the main anti-aircraft weapon the Germans had?
Yes, yes.
Were the crews quite afraid of it, or was the fire generally inaccurate?
I don't know that we thought about it all that much. Just hope that it didn't get too close. On one of the missions to Munich, we were briefed to fly over the Alps, and it was moonlight, and that was a sight to see, I must admit. When we went to some of the Eastern European towns, we had to fly over Sweden, which was all lit up, and that was a sight to see as well. They did, well, we were told they would shoot at us, but not to be too near. I don't think anyone was shot down over Sweden.
The navigator I mentioned earlier, he mentioned that there was a crew of his that used to fly over Switzerland and said that the Swiss would fire anti-aircraft guns, but they deliberately fire them too far away.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I think that was the same with Sweden. Yeah.
Did it feel strange to be seeing towns that were lit rather than in blackout?
Yes, it was certainly a sight to see.
How many missions did you go on during the war?
44 altogether.
Was that a lot by RAF standards?
Well, with the Pathfinders, the normal tour was 45. You did the normal 30, and then there was another 15. So we were one short of the total. But,
how often would you go on a mission, would you say?
Sometimes it might be 2 or 3 times in a week. Other times it might be sort of a few weeks before we went on an operation, depending possibly on the weather or the targets, I don't know.
When you were on bombing raids, could you ever see the fires below?
I remember seeing when we were on some sort of harbour, I don't know where it was, saw one of the ships which appeared to be burning, but it might just been a smoke screen. But apart from that, I don't remember, because we were usually the first in and then away.
And did you find out roughly how much damage the raids were causing?
Not really, no. No, we did have pictures taken by the later aircraft going over, but I can't say that I recall.
And was there ever any occasion where your plane had to turn back early before it reached the target?
No, apart from the fact that once we were all recalled because the target had been overrun by our troops. So, but no, we carried on. Although I said once when we had the intercom we were told not to use it because the rear gunner pilot were in contact, but it was too weak to let anyone else. But we decided to carry on anyway.
So how did the communication work aboard the aircraft?
Well, we had the speakers in the helmets, plus microphones, and you had to switch on the microphone if you wanted to speak. That's all, pretty well.
Was it very noisy aboard those planes?
It was very noisy, yes. So when we didn't have the intercom, it meant really shouting at the pilot.
And were you ever escorted by Allied fighters?
Only once, I remember. That was when we were coming back on 3 engines. Rear gunner said there's 2 single-engine aircraft approaching from the starboard quarter. But only a couple of seconds later he said, it's all right, they're Spitfires. And one of them did escort us back to the coast.
Do you think maybe the pilot of that Spitfire could see the damage on your plane?
Probably. Well, could see we were only 3 engines going, yeah.
Did the pilot ever try and tell anyone what would happen if he ever happened to get killed?
Well, I was the one that had to take over it, if necessary. And on training flights, I was able to take over the controls and keep the plane more or less straight and level, although the rear gunner said when I did it, it was more like a switchback. But that was all.
So did a Lancaster have 2 steering columns or just one?
No, I had just the one, so I would have had to get the pilot out of his seat and get in myself.
Was he allowed to teach you to do that?
Yes.
And would you have been able to land it at all?
I don't know. I wasn't taught how to do that.
So I'm just a bit puzzled. Why wouldn't they teach you how to land if you ever happened to take over?
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to kind of defeat the object of teaching.
I think it was just that I had to try and keep it in the air while the rest of the crew got out.
How did it feel to be in control of the plane, though, when you had it?
I quite enjoyed it. Yeah.
Did you get a sense of pride from doing that?
Yes.